I I am back from break, and much like the vampires that we've talked about, and even us as humans, dang if I don't get thirsty. Salute. Now, we had a question. How different is second edition from fifth? It's going to be like fifth edition D&D is to third edition D&D, where fourth edition is the outlier. In Vampire, conceptually, those, like, revised is similar to V5, though V5 is more streamlined, and a lot of the bloat, a lot of the spectacle creep, I believe, as Macabre Derek likes to call it, has been stripped away, and the mechanics and the lore are a little bit more tightly bound. As even with third edition, and it was just something at the time, right? There was this platform, whether it's D&D or other trading card games that were getting glommed onto, or role-playing games. There was a lot of powers printed, a lot of books. People were eating up the lore, and they wanted more and more. They wanted to be this, min-maxed vampire that could walk in the sun, but also control the moon. And had powers over the dead, but still had a beating heart and could conceive a child, or to be this super rare bloodline. There was probably 3 in the world, and wouldn't you know, if 2 of them weren't located in the same city that Chronicle was taking place in. Hi, Tony. So a lot of the familiarity is there, though it has been streamlined and been brought into a more congruous state with V5. Amon says, I tried once to build a vampire whose core question was, how long can an immortal hold on to his compassion they used to have? And Amon, that's it. That is the question, or as was the case that you saw in the video, and you can read about in old lore or new. That is the riddle. This is what every vampire, whether they are an elder or a fledgling, they have to contend with this. For in this game of personal and political horror, all must play by one common rule. A beast I am, lest a beast I become. As a character in this setting, this is not necessarily, or at least by a default, the noble, bright hero with adventure on the horizon. This is a state of managed decline, an endurance test where you have the promise of immortality until the sun blows up itself. But how do you get there? And what are the decisions you make along the way? Because you're no longer human, but you need humans to exist. You must consume their blood. And thank you to Insomnia Night RPG for the raid. Tony says, not a fan of vampire RPG at all. In my mind, vampires are monsters that need to be hunted and destroyed. The way Vampire makes vampires into sort of a hero. Tony, I don't know if this... I don't know if this helps. Also, hi, Vlad. Vampires are... You are the monster in this game. Now, will people run a game where they are superheroes or where there's no consequences for their actions and they can just go around and, either administer vigilante justice or be the brooding thing in the shadow that can just eat whoever and there's no real follow-up to it all? Sure. People min-max D&D characters. People do all sorts of things in, a Mary Sue sort of a way. But in this talk, in this introduction, you are playing a monster. You must consume the blood of others. Now, there is a way that you can try and subsist off of animals. There's even a way you can subsist off of the blood of other vampires. If that, that is an indirect something or other. Though that makes it's almost a difficulty level. Especially because it might work for you when you're younger, when you're closer to being a human on the other side of life. But there's a point when you're a vampire, unless your storyteller says otherwise, that in this book there's a point where not only must you drink human blood, you must kill the person whose blood you're drinking to have any kind of fulfillment from the blood. You don't get to take a pint and then leave them, taking a nap on the corner. The older you get, the more monstrous you get. Just with age. Though, in the meantime, you do have a struggle for humanity. And the whole point of the riddle, Tony and others... And I'm sorry, George. Yep, there is Hunter. So you can play Vampire from the other side as a Hunter. And even in VTM, there's the second Inquisition book you can get. So you can be the humans hunting the monsters in the system. I'm glad you had a great game, and if you want to talk about it, please feel free to do so in chat, George. But yes, you are the monster. And your humanity track, now there are always alternatives because there's all sorts of other approaches to any game. But the core mechanic is your humanity. How humane are you? In fact, the more humane you are, arguably, there's advantages. You fit in easier. You don't have to possibly spend your vitae with the blush of life to fit in, to pretend to have warmth and a flush of blood in your skin. You can wake up earlier in the evening. Maybe you can actually wake up at sunset and not an hour after it is clearly beyond the horizon. Because the more monstrous you get by losing your humanity, you wake up later and your features twist. An example in a video game form of that, I think, was the Fable game, where if you made bad decisions, you looked a little bit more devilish. If you made good ones, you got a little halo or something like that. But that's what I want to talk to in this part, Tony. The concept of the game. Because you're not really the noble hero. Even if you try and do good things, you might save a sweet abuela coming out of the corner grocery store of the city from getting mugged. That was really cool of you. So how are you going to eat? What are you going to eat? Who are you going to eat? how can you manage this unlife? How can you keep this beast at bay, right? A beast I am, lest a beast I become. That is an eternal management of inner conflict. You try to moralize it by saying, I will only drink the blood of criminals. Well, you're still drinking human blood. And there might be a point where you run out of criminals, or at least the low-hanging fruit ones. Because there's only so many abuelas with so many purses coming out of so many bodegas in the city. That suddenly, especially after, word gets out in, among criminal peers that bad things seem to happen, you might have to say, well, I would really like to just suck the blood of muggers going after poor little grandmas just wanting to get a midnight snack. But you know what? That person getting out of a taxi absolutely laid into that taxi driver. And that was uncalled for. Maybe not criminal, but maybe I can help teach this person a lesson. I don't feel as bad drinking the blood from that person who absolutely tore into that poor innocent cabbie. I'm upholding justice. And so you stalk the person out of the taxi. And then you go in for the bite. Now, hopefully, your beast doesn't take over, which is that... I don't know if you really ever have an angel on your shoulder in Vampire, but you always have that devil, the beast. Why not drink that person dry? It'll show them a lesson. In fact, it might show more people a lesson. The beast isn't always that obvious. It's not always that obvious. Yes, twirling mustache. Do the evil thing. Yes, I am the beast. It's that no one's going to miss that person. And it might be a good case to bring up. But things kind of can get looser, where you start making those compromises. And as the months pass into years, and the years continue to pass, and you're continuing to try and do the same basic survival as you have always, you don't get to necessarily, well, maybe if you're an elder, but you got a whole other set of responsibilities and problems if you are. You don't get to DoorDash your blood. You don't get to have McDonald's delivered to you, where the most you have to do is get out of your recliner and go to the door and grab it before plopping back down and nomming on some fries. Every night, you have the possibility of needing to feed more. Because merely existing, unless you are in an incapacitated state known as torpor. Existing, even with humans, right? You wake up and, I'm hungry. I could use something to eat. As a vampire, there's always that hunger. A world of darkness. All right. Thank you for lurking, Kragar. And George as well. Yep, bagging from a hospital. That you will find, just as with people, they will go where there's food and shelter. Vampires are no different. They were once people, but it's still that first basic need on Maslow's hierarchy. You need shelter. You need food to exist. Vampires need food too. It's just their food can fight back. Maybe not always individually, but once the herd of kind finds out, that's why it's such a fine line to walk with the Masquerade. Once the herd finds out, especially when they all realize they have that power, vampires can go extinct pretty quickly. At least all the obvious ones. You're dancing to a relentless techno beat in the press of warm, sweaty bodies. You're in the attic of a squat house, walls covered in graffiti, the bare concrete floor stained with mysterious liquids. You're drunk and high, coming down from the euphoria of becoming part of the writhing crowd. A woman brushes past you, her hand cold on your shoulder. You watch her as she presses between people and slips behind the DJ's table. She doesn't look that old, dressed like any of the bleary junkies grinding their bodies against you. At least not until she notices you watching her. She smiles, and in that second, she seems to hold knowledge beyond anything that could be conceived on this dance floor. Perhaps you have experienced a moment like this in real life. You've noticed a compelling stranger exchanging a moment of flirtation or terror with someone you've never seen again. They were in your life only for a fleeting moment, yet you still remember them years later. In the real world, a moment like this is nothing but chance. Who was the woman who brushed past you? Maybe she's the next DJ going to prepare for her set. Her hand cold because she was having a smoke outside. In real life, everything has an explanation. In the world of darkness, things aren't always that simple. On the surface, it looks like our world. The office where you work, the school you attended as a child, and the retirement home where you visit your grandmother are all the same in our world and in the world of darkness. Once you go deeper into the frayed, abandoned, and hidden corners, the real nature of the world of darkness starts to emerge. It's a world with secrets, deep wells of darkness, and you can stumble into them if you follow the clues. Perhaps that's what the cold hand of the woman at the illegal techno party really was. A sign you can follow, leaving your comfortable life behind and entering a secret world of terrors. By the way, have we talked about dice pools or disciplines or skills or clans we've touched on some lore-ish aspects, but no, so stick with me. We're not going to get lost tonight, I promise. The shadow of the skyscraper. In the world of darkness, vampires and stranger beings hide among the endless throng of humanity. They look like us, they strive to act like us, but at the end of the night, they are the predators and we are the prey. The world of darkness is not some distant, fantastical realm where all the rules are different. The vampire is close to you. Maybe the woman you noticed at the techno party was a vampire. Maybe the DJ was one too. The bouncers you saw at the door, even the one wearing sunglasses with flames on them. Perhaps they are all vampires, in it together, all of them the damned. The monstrous, hidden horrors of the world of darkness permeate human society. Strange creatures hunt lonely alleys and prowl in high society soirees with equal ease. As a human, you never even realize what they are until it's too late. The world of darkness is a effed up place. It's full of corruption, violence, and hypocrisy. In this, it's similar to the real world, but it also has to contend with the supernatural terrors who amplify the worst tendencies of humanity. Watch the news and consider which events might have been influenced by the subtle touch of the undead. Our world, our time, right here, right now. Vampire is a horror game, and its world is a terrible place. As the storyteller, in other systems that's the GM or the DM, as the storyteller, you don't have to make the real world any worse than it actually is. Although you certainly can. Rather, you can just focus on the elements and themes that support your vision of a dark city. There's enough police corruption, institutional neglect and racism, warmongering, hate, and brutality to make your game world dark indeed if you choose to highlight these features of reality. In a vampire game, the skyscraper fulfills the role of the castle in a classic horror story. A tall edifice of glass and steel might look modern and dynamic in the light of the day, but once the sun has set, it reveals its true nature as a needle sticking deep into the flesh of the city, injecting it with the poison of vampiric corruption. Now, this gets to the point that Tony brought up and that I had addressed as well. No heroes. In Vampire, you play characters who are vampires. They must subsist on the blood of the living. They have strange powers they can use to force their will on hapless humans. They can give of their undying blood to people, turning them into servile blood junkies, doomed to cater to the whims of the undead in hopes of their next fix. This is not a role-playing game where you play as good guys. So, Tony, I mean, hopefully, if you're still here, I hope seeing this is letting you know, because it is written. I mean, not just with people who've played in the system and get the system. It is here as well. Now, can this be ignored? And you all play. It's a superhero game, and you save the city from clearly corrupt criminals, and you play Superman. You can. Or does everyone just want to pretend to have a different vampire persona and just go and do, whatever exaggerated things they want? Sure. You can run a consequence-free game in any system. But if it does encourage you, Tony, this is telling you are not heroes. Now, some of you might ask, well, I'm used to heroic fantasy. Why would I not want to be a hero? Am I the villain? Well, you're not necessarily the villain. There's always a bigger fish. But if you want that challenge, how can you fight against nature itself of your beast? Can you actually try to be a good vampire? What are the moral decisions you make in a heated moment of hunger or anger or lust? The things that Vampire encourages you to explore through the mechanics of the game and the tone of it are not classic heroic fantasy. If that's all you ever want to play, then I will tell you straight up, this game is not for you, and that is fine. Every game is not for everyone. If you want to be the big damn hero, and you want to have that epic adventure is always on the horizon, and you are the undisputable good guys, Vampire is most likely not going to be the game for you. Now, if you're willing to think outside the box or challenge yourself to try something new, or you accept this, you say, you know what, I've done enough heroics. I wonder if I can kind of live in that twilight, where I'm not the villain, but I'm not the hero either. Consider Vampire. You might do good things in a sense. Your individual actions might even be seen as heroic, only to realize that everything you've done has gone on to harm more people than you've helped, because you are nothing but a pawn to someone who is arguably more of a something. Because Vampire does do street-level horror and folklore-style stuff pretty well. But the further down that iceberg you go, you realize that we're talking more Eldritch horror. So, this is not a role-playing game where you play good guys. Perhaps your character tries desperately to hold on to vestiges of human morality despite the sordid demands of vampiric existence. Or maybe they have already adjusted their morality to their new condition, telling themselves that they're no worse than other vampires after they accidentally kill someone. Oop. Oh, did I miss it in a separate column? Hang on. Oh no! There we go. Whatever the character's approach to their morality, it's very likely they end up doing things the player finds morally repugnant. Using this game to explore moral questions and immoral acts can be interesting and emotionally meaningful. After all, the character is not you and the game is not real. You can use it as a fictional space to explore terrible things. If you are a person who cannot separate this, and I mean, there's many hyperbolic examples on Twitter or in other places where people cannot separate fantasy from reality, or they can't understand that people play these games to get the negativity out. That just because your character, the story you presents a bad world in which whatever isms exist, doesn't mean you as the storyteller nor you as the player are a bad person. If you have a sense of emotional maturity to you and a non-infantile intellectual capacity, you can get so much from this game. If you want to explore it. I remember the Satanic Scare, Tony. I do. And it's tough if people are telling you that you're literally this or that by playing a game, which is a very presumptive thing. And if I feel kind of embittered, it's because there's a bit of an irony, right? As much as the Inquisition existed in real life, and then we have the Second Inquisition, which is this fictional take on a modern Inquisition that's rising up to rout out the vampires. The moral police of the Satanic Panic, or otherwise, have swung to the other side, of the pendulum. It's not coming from the same group of people, or at least not as intently. It's coming from a group of people on the other side, and it is just as much that witch hunt, that cancellation, or the doxing as torture, the cancellation as an execution, the burning of witches. And so, just to you have a couple years on me, Tony. I'm gonna be turning 24 at some point in my life. At some point, I'll be 24. This game can be played like a wacky superpower adventure where you are the noble, bright heroes. It can be played as a comedy, yes. Most of the time, this is going to take an emotional and intellectual quality of the players to be able to separate reality from fiction, or to say just because these ideas exist in our world of darkness, it doesn't mean that we support it nor encourage it. It might actually help us to be even more empathetic to people who face whatever the issue is. Or you live out some power fantasy that you've always had that's not you, but damn if it doesn't feel good for a couple hours a week. Because maybe you feel like you've been trod upon or ignored. So you play a big, brutish brouhaha. And you Kool-Aid man your way through every wall you can. You beat up bullies and whatever you want. And you live out the power fantasy, even though in real life you'd never do it. You will come to realize that the blood is your master. You are being consumed from within. You won't feel it at first, but then slowly, you will realize that humanity is a distant memory. You will know what you lived as them, or you'll know that you lived as them, but it will fade like a dream. You will only have the memory of a memory until you are a slipshod effigy of who you were. The beast within will wear your skin as long as it gets fed. So have a little fun with the concepts, right? How long does it take for your neophyte vampire to start getting used to hunting for blood? Do they lie to themselves, insisting that they're a good person, or do they believe their self-flagellation and guilt somehow makes the killing okay? You can explore these questions through a character and seek out parallels to real-life issues in your own life and the world at large. This is one of the wonderful things about tabletop role-playing games as an artistic medium in the age of the internet. You are responsible for the well-being of your fellow players, but the events of your game don't have to end up splayed out on the internet. The private nature of the game allows you to explore moral territory that's difficult to approach in the online world, where the danger of context collapse is ever present. You can take risks and play raw. Stories of redemption are within the scope of this game too, but redemption is hard. How do you stay the moral course if you literally have to force your fangs into the neck of a human every night? Huh. Out of curiosity, do any of you remember the name of my Vampire the Masquerade game that I'm running? Oh well. Other tales exist with different choices. If your character is a working mother trapped in a vicious, abusive marriage, being embraced as a vampire can give her power and options she never had before. For the disenfranchised of the world, becoming a bloodsucker is like making a deal with the devil. You get a chance to escape the hell you were trapped in at the cost of your humanity. These sorts of scenarios point to the labyrinth of morality at the heart of the world of darkness. Ostensibly good people can commit horrifying acts, and even monsters occasionally commit kindness. Close, Persilis. Close. In Vampire, you'll be playing with evil. Your characters have to hunt for blood, an evil act in itself. They might slide further on the scale of morality, murdering and killing just to survive. As they go deeper into vampire society, they have to stand by as ancient monsters commit terrible crimes. When you run a vampire game, you'll want horrible things to feel horrible, but you also want your game to remain playable and accessible to your players. The limits of which horrors are too much are very individual, and these boundaries are something you want to talk about as a troupe before the game starts. The best way to approach this collaboration, and this is advice if you haven't done this before, or especially if you have a group of newer players, This is probably redundant for those of you with solid groups. You already know each other's boundaries, or you can bring it up in a different way, or a more casual way. But it is worth bringing up. Best way to approach this collaboration is not to hector your players, instead accepting the individual idiosyncrasies everyone has. Perhaps one of your players has just become a father and doesn't want to see violence inflicted on young children, even in a horror story. And that doesn't even have to be that a vampire, extracts the blood of a child. That could be, no even bringing up abuse of any kind, or just no kids at all are brought up. We all pretend they're there, but they're not, or whatever, right? Or maybe one of your players has been subjected to harassment online and doesn't want to see those types of things happen in a tabletop game. Our experience suggests that these individual limits have nothing to do with how severe any given evil act is. A player can be fine after a horrific torture scene, yet find even a suggestion of domestic violence to be too much. There's no easy trick to make horror always work for your players, but having an open discussion is a good way to start. The beauty of a tabletop role-playing game is that you can tailor it for the specific individuals sitting around your gaming table. Echo Train, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You may have noticed, now I get that there is sentiment, or it can even be taken too far with X cards or red cards or entire checklists of varied responses to all manner of things of, do you consent to this game having spiders or ghosts or the open sea or clowns or I'm saying this neutrally. It can be taken way overboard to a point of parody or ridiculousness, or it can be completely ignored. I want to point out that we are seeing here, and I absolutely agree, in a game of personal and political horror. Your game may not be right for everyone, and that is fine. Not just the game system. I'm not talking about whatever could happen under the umbrella of the World of Darkness. Keep it close. Keep it personal. Poke the wounds that are presented to instill thrill and horror and chills, and also to stoke victories of one kind or another. Every table's going to be different about what each of you or as a group finds horrific, or that you want to explore. Or maybe there's the person who got that online harassment that is almost using VTM as a therapy to get over it and to move on with life through living an unalive existence. I don't know. It's not everyone. But horror works well if you do keep it close and personal. And it's okay to keep it close and personal. And to realize not everyone on some broad internet is going to like what you like or dislike what you dislike. Or they can hope to have the understanding or context that you have with your players as a storyteller, or that you as a player have with everyone else at your table as a participant in that close, visceral, morally conflicting set of events. But hi, Echo. And by the way, any of you lurking, there's 36 of you. My gosh. If any of you do have questions, by the way, I'll do my best to answer them. Or if you say, well, I'm new, what's going on? If I can continue to expound on things, I'll do so, but I want to make sure I'm conveying what this is. We haven't talked about any rules, okay? And I'm not going to tonight. What is this? And only you can make this decision. And it's not like, well, I ain't scared of vampires and it's a source of pride. You just may not jive with this type of game because you want happy-go-lucky adventure. You want to play Honey Heist. That's not me ragging on Honey Heist. Or Lasers and Feelings. Or Glitter Hearts. Or anything else. This just might not be your game. People don't like all kinds of books or movies or comics for their own personal reasons. And that's fine. And if this is not your game, I mean, hopefully you'll try it one day or you can find a way to interact with it. But if not, don't, right? No game is better than bad game, in my opinion. Because if you're forcing yourself to show up and you're forcing yourself to smile, if you're forcing yourself to interact with things that you cannot or will not process or want to think differently about, or open up to, then it's okay. It's fine. Play a game that supports your mood, your lifestyle, your desires, that has the energy, the vibe that you want. Centuries ago, wise elder vampires established the Camarilla, which has kept kindred across Europe, the Americas, and the world safe while guarding the sacred traditions of their kind. Or so goes the Camarilla propaganda story. Still, despite its recent setbacks, the Camarilla defines vampire life for a lot of kindred around the world. Long seen as an immutable, invincible ivory tower, the Camarilla finds itself in a state of flux, with many of its oldest members and most established princes disappearing or becoming hard to reach. A mysterious force known as the Beckoning calls them away, leaving their Regne? Oh boy, that's a new word to me. But hey, that's what's fun about the about RPGs and such. You learn new words. Regne wide open for anarch aggression. The Camarilla has lost some of its most famous domains, such as Berlin and London, to this instability. In many cities, the Camarilla no longer rules with absolute authority, but shares its regnum as an aristocracy of sorts, mingling uneasily with the anarchs. It's not all gloom and doom in the Camarilla, however. For a young and ambitious vampire, the disappearance of so many elders has left space for upward mobility unheard of in the history of the sect. For the first time ever, a neonate can take over a domain if they play the game well enough. What's more, many of the elders have left their estates, fortunes, and resources essentially abandoned, tended by a few confused blood servants. A sharp neonate can hijack a fortune accumulated over the millennia and use it for their own purposes. Now, you can take this as this is how it is in 5th edition lore. This is a way, as someone who has played in older systems, this is a way of creating a break, a margin, an excuse, or whatever you want to call it, all right? This is the break that is allowing for a new consideration to be instilled in old players, or for new players to have that wedge through which they can enter and aren't obligated with everything that has come from the past. You know, in a meta rules and sort of game culture conversation. I'm not saying this is bad, that this is not pessimistic in that way, but this is that break in the lore. What is the Beckoning? I don't know. What do you want it to be? Does it seem silly that an elder would just give up a mansion and millions of dollars in gold coins from the old world, or all the... It does, in a sense, but it also makes you ask, what's going on? Why is there a power vacuum? Where's that power going? And also, how's it going to be handled by the next generation? By the way, that's a larger societal question going on right now among humans. What is the beckoning but the older generation dying off, leaving behind vast sums of estates and wealth to confused Gen Xers, or perhaps angry or inexperienced millennials, or even Zoomers. We are taking the elements of our real world, and they can be distilled through the world of darkness here. How many times have we seen, and we actually invoke this, a young person becoming a billionaire with a vast domain of property? Can it happen? Absolutely, we see it. So for as much as you might go, wow, that does seem weird that, a 500-year-old vampire might just give up. Well, what's the beckoning? Is it some supernatural phenomena among the elders, or among all kindred, and those younger just don't feel the tug as much? Is it propaganda by the Second Inquisition? Because actually all the old ones are getting rooted out or captured and experimented on? Is it just a natural thing like the sun burning out? Maybe, after several thousand years now, we've actually found an expiration date. When does Sweet Rabies Bay expire? Which, by the way, my personal request is to please put a bottle of Sweet Rabies Bay in your World of Darkness game. Right now, the Camarilla, or if you want the old world pronunciation, we have two L's, Camarilla. Right now, the Camarilla crouches on the defensive, but it never remains that way for long. The energy provided by the young and the ambitious gives the sect new life. For much of the Camarilla, sometimes abbreviated as CAM, by the way, history, when a gifted or greedy neonate proposed a plan, elders responded predictably. The time isn't right. Take a century or two to think it over and learn how the world works. Then perhaps the prince will grant you a hearing. Innovation equaled grounds for suspicion, not promotion. Furthermore, the elders atop the ivory tower came of age in a time when windmills and telescopes were high technology. Kings ruled unquestioningly, and money took the form of favors owed or gifts exchanged. Modern changes confused and irritated them, and they tried simply waiting them out. It didn't work. But now, with younger kindred increasingly making decisions, the Camarilla is slowly abandoning its traditional strategy of inaction and moving to exert real power in the modern world. It's a time for a young vampire to make their mark. Why not be like the neonates who spearheaded the capture of Mexico City from the Sabbat? The elders and justicars of the Camarilla long thought such a bold act impossible. What else might be possible if you can seize the night first? Total revolution. This is a good time to be an anarch. The anarch revolt, held long dormant by Camarilla opposition and its own infighting, now surges all across the world. Even established Camarilla cities hold anarch enclaves. The elite retreat into Elysia as the formerly dispossessed claim their own domains. The fall of Los Angeles and the birth of the anarch free states on the American West Coast formed a mere prelude to the fall of Berlin and other cities. Still reeling from the loss of their elders, the rudderless vampires of the Camarilla now find themselves unable to defend their privileges without the power of ancient blood to enforce their decrees. There is no single anarch movement united by ideology or leadership. The global anarch revolution is a spontaneous force born out of centuries of Camarilla repression. By the way, are we seeing also, it's not just, oh, wow, yeah, those boomers, they sure are dying off, those old fogies. We're also seeing commentary, what's going on the United States West Coast. What's going on in cities like Portland? It's fine, especially in a system like this, to poke fun at or extract concepts from what we see happening and wonder if there is a supernatural force behind it. Or just to take that and, maybe undeath as an echo of life. What if the vampires are actually more subject to the whims and values and morals of there's like an unconscious resonance that by being undead, ghosts kind of linger for particular reasons. What if they're somehow affected by this collective unconsciousness, or at least of those who are around them? And so those changes are affected that way too. Mages have to abide by the paradox. I won't get into detail there, but if you're curious, you can look up what paradox is in the mage games. I wonder if the beckoning has something to do with that. Or not. Haha. This is a time of unparalleled opportunity for an anarch vampire to make their mark, ideally on a Camarilla throat. No matter how humble your origins, you can take the fight to the so-called princes and try to topple the ivory tower. Their enemies, weakened by mortal hunters and the insidious beckoning, the correlation of forces is finally on the side of the anarchs. The revolution is just the start, however. The real challenge for a politically minded neonate comes afterward. Does the revolution collapse into violence and brutality? Or is it possible for a charismatic and ambitious Lick, nickname for a vampire, to build their own utopia of blood? Yeah. Marco, yeah, I'm not crazy. I tell you, Vianon was right about the blood-sucking pizzerias all along. That's the kind of thing you can absolutely lean into. Also, I missed a first-time chat above of CPO Mendez. I'm just lurking and listening about a game I haven't played in 20 years. Well, welcome back, Mendez, and I hope it's bringing back some really good memories of your own time on the streets in the cities that you were haunting. And you all are welcome to share stories. If you are an Elder or even a Methuselah style VTM player, you've played since the 90s, since those edgy days of yore of black leather trench coats and sunglasses all the time, katanas and Uzis and the first flip phone kind of a thing happening. You're welcome to share those stories. Or if you want to sit back and listen and lurk, you may do that as well as I go through this with you all. Summoning of the Blood God. I mean, that could very well be it too. Once the door is even slightly cracked open for the supernatural and paranormal, it's probably more like Pandora's box in that case. Echo says, old D&D players are gatekeepy, not gonna lie. It can be. It can be that way, Echo Train. Now, I mean, the generations are gonna gatekeep the things that they value. As we've seen a swing with the newer generation coming in and trying to gatekeep the old people out of new D&D by taking over various concepts or that originated in it and have just modified over time. It's like that with any group that holds a particular ideal or tradition. So it's not even just the long beards or the gray beards. You might find it there because there's a lot more that they've lived and experienced that maybe they feel is being attacked or stripped away. Which, hey, we saw that as a concept here, right? Among the elders in the Camarilla. And there are individuals, of course, who are nefarious for some sort of curmudgeonly or just very unaccepting way. Though, Echo, I hope that you'll find that there's many more people who've been into these hobbies for a long time that are, whether or not they're open to particular adaptations, that they are happy teaching the game to all manner of newcomers, regardless of age or any other demographical differences that exist within the group or between the whoever's running the game and playing in the game. Because many of those people who are willing to teach and willing to play, they're often not very loud about it. They're often not on Twitter or Facebook posting about, I guess, like, everyone praised me because I totally ran a group for, some adjective. There's a lot of people who live beautiful, wonderful lives. They may still hold their values, and those values may not change, but they may be open to interacting with others who are different than they. But you don't hear about it as much as you hear about the louder people who do, unfortunately, set a bad and loud example that can be cast on others. It can be intense, Echo, and I don't know exactly what the generational differences you have with those you've run for, but I do promise you, Echo, that there are many people who are happy to adapt or even teach how they approach something, or they're happy with your approach and their approach, and you are just on two, like, you're separate, but you're on a parallel path to journey together. And that kind of dynamic is great because you have a lot to teach each other. Whether or not you accept what the other teaches is fine, but it's there. You could at least consider it, right? Violet, hello. Yeah, it is. It can be a knee-jerk reaction because as something is exploding and getting popular, other people, will come and be like, "Well, yeah, so this has been this way for a very long time, but right now we're deciding as people with arguably little to no investment of the past in it." This is the observation. I'm simply stating that these people with little to no actual investment of time, money, input, memories, seek to fundamentally change aspects of something that we've held dear for a great long while. That's the story of humanity. It's just a very interesting and maybe more personal to many of us ecosystem or a time capsule in which we find this playing out. And we see that repeated here and in works of fiction, novels and comic books and everything throughout time. It's a lot of echoing. Now, I'm not going to read all of this. I think by now you have an idea of what can be set up for you. Do you want the old style, the 90s style, where, things are what they are from then, or you're running V5 and you're running it in 2023, but you want an absolute ivory tower, clenched fist cam? Do it! Because remember, in a game like this, it tends to be more personal, it tends to be closer, and so you can tell those tales, or you can challenge a firmer grasp of the ivory tower than something that is just a more, well, it's there. Okay, well, what does that do? There's a lot of things in here to read. You may or may not agree with some of the things that are even written in this book. You may not like a particular take. Or if you feel that the way things are written leans more in one direction than another. I mean, I don't know you or how you process or think about things. But that doesn't mean you still can't enjoy something your way. And I would encourage you to do so. especially if you've been looking to try a new game. If many of us, we met through D&D, we got started with D&D. D&D is fine for what it is. But what about other games that are arguably as venerable? Vampire's been around since 91. What kind of a story can you tell differently? Or do you want to have some fun and challenge yourself? Do you want to try running Curse of Strahd in Vampire? You can. As the meme usually is, people are like, oh, do any of you have any homebrew mods for running a Cyberpunk game in D&D 5e? You could just run Cyberpunk Red. No, I'm looking for homebrew custom rules that I have to learn to play Cyberpunk in 5e. I don't have time to learn the rules of Cyberpunk Red. You know, that's the meme and the chuckle, the sensible chuckle we can have. If you want to flip it and reverse it, you run Curse of Strahd in Vampire the Masquerade. Even if you want to make it a little bit more modern of a tale. Do any of you remember the Romeo and Juliet movie that modernized it into it was probably Los Angeles or some other West Coast city, where in the opening the duel with the long swords were actually just custom engraved pistols. Why not? You have fun with something familiar, but translate it into something new, or challenge yourself to think or play differently, or to open yourself up to new characters and ideas that maybe you haven't gotten to explore through those other systems. You like that version, Violet? I like the tropical shirt that the friar wore. I thought that was nice. Amon says, I once had a talk with an elderly woman about generational communication. Was changing because we both didn't manage to get a bulletproof solution for both sides. It will always be a process of overlapping, Amon. I don't think there's ever going to be that bulletproof solution. It's always a handling of what comes your way and an adaptation to it. As the generations overlap each other in some ways, sometimes it curves back and you revisit something, but there is just always this mesh. And the mesh works when the fibers are together. You're trying to bridge the gaps. I'm making my own classes for D&D, put my touch on it, and trust me, I'm cold-headed about it. Yeah, so... And Echo, I'll tell you as well, for as much as there are oldsters, the grognards, which has come to have a more, it's kind of arguably had a negative connotation, but like maybe a more specified negative commentary. The newcomers also have developed their own sort of stereotype as well. And if you can buck that stereotype, if you can, whether or not you agree with what an elder player says or does something, but if you can be that younger player that stands out against whatever other broad brush stereotype, terminally online, whatever, you can wield so much more power and influence with and or against the oldsters by remaining even-tempered, by not getting ruffled or complaining on Twitter if someone said a mean thing to you. Like, I was told I couldn't play a tiefling, but that's in the... This is a pure example I'm making up. I was told I couldn't play a tiefling because it's in the player's handbook, and this old guy, he said I couldn't. I want someone to cancel this person. Well, it sucks, because you probably really wanted to play a tiefling. Maybe tieflings are your favorite race to play in D&D. And maybe even that old guy was actually doing it to be a dick to you. but can you be that better person? It doesn't justify the oldster's behavior or the reason why he said that tieflings don't exist or aren't allowed. But you have adapted, you've overcome, and there's a lot of other people who might get to watch that example. And instead of going, someone should do something about this thing, you are the person doing the specific thing to address the specific problem. You stand out. And even if that's in your nature, you might say, I've always kept a level head. Sometimes, Echo Train, to stand out from the crowd, it's not because you stepped forward, it's because everyone else has stepped backwards. And if you can maintain that level, adaptability, a reasonable open-mindedness, remember, the mark of intelligence is being able to entertain an idea without necessarily needing to accept it. That's an Aristotle quote. At least I think I approximated it close enough. Then you are that leader. And it might suck to realize that other people of your whatever generation have stepped backwards to the point where you just being you are a forefront. But dang it, if people like you aren't needed to be that example. Well, I'm glad it was a solid communication between you and that elder, Amon. Yep. Well, Echo, I hope there are more players like you, not only in D&D, and in Vampire, and in Pathfinder, and in Call of Cthulhu, and in these hobbies in general. Because these are games, whether you're telling a horror story of vampires in a modern setting, you're going back to a turn-of-the-century, turn-of-the-century detective story in Call of Cthulhu, or you're doing, I don't know, you're actually playing something in the future. You're playing BattleTech, A Time of War. We need this kind of interaction and communication in the hobbies. To teach, to listen, to have patience, and to just pass this on. Because, Echo, guys like me, we're a lot closer to falling off the edge of the cliff. And you got a lot more ground you can cover before you get to that point in your life. And so it's important that even you, not just me as an old-timer, reaching down to you, you also need to reach out to those beside you to teach and to spread this kind of understanding, to challenge people to try a new system, even if the understanding is this might rustle your jimmies a little bit morally as you delve into darker aspects of humanity. But if you do it and you make it personal, right? Player by player, table by table, story by story, and you can teach people who might have been resistant otherwise if a person like me approached because of a bias. Well, you're older. Clearly we can't connect. You can't speak sense to me. You can't understand my dank maymays. Alright, well, you can only help people who want to be helped. So, if it's a matter of what's on the surface, Echo Train, You're the agent on the inside. Because then you can approach that close-minded younger player or hobbyist. And even though you might say the exact same things that I would say, it's meaningful coming from a peer, from someone more like you than someone like me. And so there is that instilled responsibility. Which, by the way, that kind of generational communication and responsibility, chef's kiss, is baked in to this setting, and arguably even the mechanics of Vampire 2. Iron Chef, you have to run all the classes before you can go back to one that... Yep. Yep, and you know what? If everyone agrees to that, and they have fun challenging themselves like that, hey, that's great. And if there's a game where a group of people have played for 20 years, and every character they've made is a dwarf, maybe even it's always been a party of dwarf fighters, and that's been their core group for 20 years, are they having beer and pretzel laughs and fun? Are they telling compelling stories of camaraderie and wartime loss and emotion? Awesome. Yep, Amon, asking questions is a great way to not only learn, but also show you're paying attention. Whether or not you accept is fine, because you're coming from a place of not understanding. Marco says the whole narrative about people being too woke, too sensitive, etc. is often cherry-picking a few bad apples. It's a pessimistic stereotype that makes me groan. This view of the younger generation is just as often setting up barriers in communication and giving people carte blanche to dismiss real criticism. Yeah, it is very much an overused trope. I mean, because look, as long as there's two people, there's innumerable differences between just the two, let alone the, what are we up to? 8 billion people on the planet now? So I agree. There are very loud and bad examples of pick a demographic by age or some other quality. And there are members of that qualification that are embarrassments, that set a poor example for the many other people who would never who would never speak like that, behave like that, nor endorse the actions that person claiming to be a part of that group is discussing. And so yes, just a surface level saying something is woke, that doesn't really... It can express an idea, but it's not communication. Just like data is not information. Information is data plus context. So, you know, if something is alt-right, if something is fascist, if something is woke, if something is what I mean, think of any other terms that you hear or that are in clickbait titles. I mean, there's examples, and there's both consequences for the actions of people on both sides of that term. As the culture continues to shift and the pendulum swings, again, themes that even in the opening pages we've read about here. But I especially enjoy communicating, telling stories, reaching out, finding ideas, even being challenged myself. Because maybe I got something wrong, like that Aristotle quote, or we learn that, well, it's attributed to Aristotle, but it's actually apocryphal. Yeah, actually, we're nerds here. We can do that, right? Actually, it's apocryphally, a quote by Aristotle. Cool, I learned something. And you know what? I have nothing to be embarrassed about. People make mistakes. And, I mean, I can understand the sarcasm of the pushing the glasses up, the actually. But if you were polite enough about it, just going, hey, yeah, you know, here's this to consider. Cool. We've communicated. I've actually improved. And you still got a fun interaction where it was a participation in something and not an explosion of two different forces. Yeah, 8 billion delicious blood bags. I like that thinking, Marco. Now, in the following nights together, we will obviously delve into more. In fact, we're going to start getting into the rules, the basic rules. How do you build your dice pools? What do things generally mean? We'll do that tomorrow. Because, hey, if I've hooked you, I've hooked you. Maybe you want to come back for that part of the workshop. But tonight, it was you found the book on the shelf at your friendly local game store. You said, you know what? This cover art's pretty interesting. What's this about? And there we go. A couple terms were thrown out. Concepts of rules might have been thrown out. But I hope that this was interesting and approachable. And that you realize this might be a system for you. If you can roll a d20 in D&D, I promise you can roll a couple d10s in Vampire. And you can read the results all the same. So let's take a look at the basic rules tomorrow. And we can get into a bit more detail in our final night of the workshop on Friday. Then, of course, Saturday is our monthly giveaway of pre-painted minis. So I hope you all are around. If any of you found us and are new, every month I give out pre-painted D&D minis from WizKids as a thank you, to pay it forward, to put minis on your all's tables that you can use to inspire yourself to run a new character, tell a story, think of something you haven't before. Or if you're like, yeah, minis aren't my thing, fine, give them to a friend or a family member that can use them. That's cool of you to do. In fact, there's a lot of those minis you can even run in a VTM game. There are, if you don't always want to use, Theater of the Mind for it. And then in our week 2, we're going to build characters together. And then in our week 3, to close it out, we're going to go over how to plot your own original chronicle using this book and this system. Slow, night by night, step by step. I'm going to guide you through it, give you ideas to think about, references to go to, and expand on from there. And by the end of our 3 weeks together, we will not only have a coterie of vampires, but an original concept for a chronicle that is built for them, by them, that will enhance and challenge them alike. And if you're coming into this from not having played it, I hope over time you're going to say, you know what? I've given this a little time, a little consideration, I've followed along, and I've seen it's not that difficult to do. I might have to think about some things differently than the system or the systems I'm used to, but I think I can work with this. And if not, hey, you still hung out with a bunch of other people talking about games we like, talking about core concepts of humanity like communication. And was anything lost? Not at all, because we're all still better for being reminded of that stuff. I'm glad that your friend was able to do so, Amon. And yeah, by the way, as Rip Artist put up there, we do have a Discord. Now, I kept things pretty PG-13, even when I put my disclaimer up about various conspiracy theories that, could fuel the source of monstrous plots. The Discord is the same, just like I ask people to carry themselves in the physical store, try and keep things PG-13. The games on Tuesday, the Red Deemer games, are run more like an R-rated movie, as a heads up. But generally we keep things PG-13 around here. We keep it civil. And I'm fine talking about all manner of things because we can supply the context that we're discussing it. We're having a dialectic. We are able to take an idea that one, both, or neither accept or commonly bring up, put it on the table, and we each kind of poke and prod it. And it is what it is. And when it's done, we put it away. And there's no love lost. And we don't have to yell or cancel each other or whatever. Farm internet clout or rage bait clicks or whatever from it. We can actually be human beings, enjoying a human hobby that goes into our deepest hardwired gift as a created species or as an evolved species or a little bit of both. And that is storytelling.